I'd like to thank the grace of heaven, virtues of masters, grand predecessor, transmitters, lecturers, and all of you for giving me the opportunity to share this class today. So today's class is on the scripture that is from a Dharma class in Ohio on May 26th and 27th of 2018. So the Buddha started with a poem first, and he says, continuing with the natural course of the 3 periods of Tao propagation, universal salvation of the 3 realms is at hand. Heaven begins the selection process, descending the golden thread to rescue the lost children. Make up one's mind, do not waver, maintain self-respect and sincerity, and do not act hastily. Do not fear tests and trials. In passing the tests, one restores the essence. So we know that we're in the white period now, and that Tao propagation is our mission, right? So we know we're nearing the end, and everything we do now is counting. So we want to be firm in our decisions to cultivate and keep working towards our goals, right? If we can cultivate well, restore our true Buddha nature, we'll be able to pass these hardships and tests we encounter and return to absolute heaven. Okay? And the first word of each line that's underlined here is actually the name of the Buddha who said this. So he says, I am the chief examiner of the 3 realms. By God's decree, I enter the temple and make obeisance to God. Little brothers and sisters, how are you? Be calm and still and wait for our brother's instructions. So it's really special that we get to be called little brothers and sisters by a Buddha, right? And he says, the world is full of great changes. What can remain everlasting? Will there be any regrets at the end of one's life? We must consider carefully. It is a priority to awaken to the impermanence. Holy Teacher guides us to enter the temple, but it is up to us to study the truth. So think about, what is the only thing that is truly everlasting, that is forever, right? Our lives keep changing. We all keep getting older. One day when we're on our deathbed, we don't want to regret not cultivating. So we need to truly realize and awaken to that everything around us in this world is a form, an illusion, and it's not permanent. The only thing permanent is our Buddha nature, that original essence. And our affinities with the Buddhas, with Holy Teacher, that's what brought us in to receive the Tao blessing. But it's up to us to self-motivate, and we want to sincerely wish to cultivate to improve ourselves. And we know that nobody can force us or do it for us, and it's truly up to each of us. He says, the Tao is evident in our conduct, and we act according to circumstances wherever we are. Diligently get rid of our bad habits and bad tempers, then marvelous wisdom will gradually increase. Do not complain about mundane matters. We must understand clearly the principle of cause and effect from our own deeds. So others can see how well or poorly we might cultivate Tao based on our behaviors, our speech, our conduct. And if we cultivate and rid ourselves of this so-called dust, these bad habits we've created, our bad tempers, then we can make space for our true wisdom from our Buddha nature to come about, right? The more we practice that, the more our wisdom can grow and mature. And one of the most important concepts of cultivating the Tao is that law of karma, of cause and effect. So everything we do, say, or even think is planting a seed of karma. So we should not complain because it's pretty much all self-inflicted, whether we know it or not. So we must firmly keep in mind and never abandon the notion of cutting off evil and cultivating good. A noble person aspires upward and with foresight. A broad and magnanimous heart and mind leads to further progress. If we often say good words, people will not tire of listening. If we always see the good in others, there will be endless joy. So to become a noble, or we could say superior person, we need to have aspirations and a long-term vision in mind, right? The more we cultivate, the more we should be improving and making progress. And we always want to have, or, be a positive person. So I'm sure we've all encountered someone who's just, sometimes their personality, they're constantly negative and complaining all the time. It can be really hard and draining to be around that type. So we don't want to be like that. And Buddhists have said in the past, the more positive we are, speak kind words to others, we will be like a magnet and others will want to be around us. If we're all positive and happy, then we all get to experience that endless joy together. The truly sincere and good faith wish for world harmony will move heaven. If people can restore their Buddha nature, then everybody will have a golden purple lotus platform to return to in heaven. Only when all kinds of karmic affinity and conditions are satisfied can one step on this level path. So thank the grace of heaven for universal salvation. Thank Holy Teacher for taking care of us, and also the protection given by our ancestors, giving us the opportunity to know the true self. Right, so we all have affinities and karmas. That's why each of us have different experiences, different challenges. Once we can resolve all of it, though, all of our own, then our paths will be smoother. So the main thing to always keep in mind is gratitude. Right? We want to be thankful for everything we have and for this chance that we were able to receive the Tao blessing and the time we have now to cultivate. And also be thankful that we just have the best teacher, our holy teacher, who's always looking out after us, helping us even if we can't see it or feel it. So without all of that, without all of them, we would never get a chance to even know that we have a Buddha nature, this true self. So we always want to be grateful. He says, coming here, we must stay focused on learning the true principles. Raise the level of awareness and energy. Do not muddle through the learning. Learn to be humble and modest through self-management. Let go of attachments and do not be confused. We must strengthen and solidify the Tao heart and mind and thoughts. Understand the truth and see through the forms or images to remove the obstacles. Okay, so it's easy for us to become distracted, get attracted to things in this mundane world, right? It can be a lot of fun, and it can also have a lot of challenges. But we always have to remind ourselves that everything in this mundane world are illusions and forms. So we want to transcend past that, right? Now, we want to constantly go to temple to learn, improve ourselves. So because going there often is like a reminder and helps us to be less confused and less distracted. Live up to heaven's grace and master's virtues. Concentrate and inspire to refine oneself. Tao is not in one particular place. It is in the moment when we have disciplined our body, mouth, and mind. With self-motivation, we can improve daily. True cultivators are blessed and happy. He says, I hold the merit and demerit book in hand. Keep firmly in mind the temple rules and regulations. So then he says he's going to stop writing and step aside to supervise the class unseen. Okay, so now this is day 2 of the Dharma class, and a different Buddha has channeled and also started with a poem. They say, Tao is plain, common, ordinary, and true. Man must be upright, harmonious, impartial, and moderate. If the heart and mind holds no contention, no desires, no selfishness, and no ego, then one will be dignified, self-respecting, free, and at ease. Okay, so the Buddha explains these lines in more detail later on. And he says, I am Jigong Living Buddha. By God's decree, he enters Tianren Temple and make obeisance to God and says, disciples, how are we? So Holy Teacher shares instructions given to us by God, what we should do, how we should be, and if we follow these principles, then God, our spiritual mother, will be very happy, he says. So cherish this fine opportunity because the 4 difficulties become easy. So the 4 difficulties are born as a human, born in the white period, born at a time when the Tao is widely available, and born in a time where we can encounter the Tao. So we're able to overcome all 4 difficulties in this lifetime. So that's why we're really fortunate, right? And then he says, diligently learn to support each other. So Holy Teacher says we should be mutually supportive. If we don't know something, then someone can tell us or we tell them. If someone needs help, we assist them. So we support each other mutually. That's what this means, he says. Happy when a friend is coming from afar, our heart and mind is in accord. So even people from far away are willing to come and be close to us, and those who come near us feel happy and joyful. And he says sometimes people who were originally good friends, when we first met, everything felt great, and after spending more time together, somehow the relationship worsens. Doesn't that happen? So he says, what should we do? Well, he says a truly cultivated person is someone whose relationships grow stronger the longer they spend time with others. Okay? So the more we cultivate, the more we can improve our relationships too. Depart from biases and attachments to become enlightened. So he says we should not be looking to take advantage of others, and it's actually not a bad thing to get the short end of the stick. And actually the deeper meaning here we can also say is talking about our Buddha nature. We're in harmony when our friend or our Buddha nature is close to us. Okay? And the 4 underlined Chinese characters create a new line that says, stay far away from the 4 appearances or images, which include the ego, personality, or you could say duality, being, and life. So if we can do that, then our Buddha nature will naturally come about. Okay. So he says, God's good children, listen carefully to these instructions. Constantly be awake and aware in managing one's life. Okay, so Holy Teacher says to not be confused and bewildered. We want to be very awake and aware and clear constantly. So we want to manage our own lives, not hand them over to others to manage for us. So he says some of us might say it's God's arrangement or it's given to us by God. Well, he says it's not. It's the result of the karma we created in the past. So whatever we experience now is the consequence of our own actions. We reap what we sow. So for example, he says, when we work, where does our money go? Into our own pocket or our own bank account, right? So when we do good deeds, naturally we enjoy good rewards. When we do bad things, then what happens? We must bear the consequences ourselves. So whether we encounter good or bad situations, when it's good, we should be grateful. When it's bad, we don't want to keep complaining. So if we're not satisfied with our current situation, what should we do? Well, he says we need to change our mindset, our way of living, and our habits. Then positive change will naturally follow. One's true master should be in charge when conducting oneself according to the norms of society. So if we like to smoke and drink, then we're damaging our health. So he says we should just stop smoking and stop drinking. So get rid of bad habits and vices to the utmost of our ability. Choose goodness without the need for recognition and fame. Okay, so we want to get rid of the bad habits in our lifestyle. If we like criticizing or gossiping about others, then from now on, we should not do those things. And when we do good deeds, we should not always be announcing what we did. Okay, so Buddhas are saying, we want to stay alert as we navigate through our lives. And our true master is our Buddha nature. Let it be our guide. Always act with dignity and integrity. The heart and mind must be calm and stable, be unshaken by favor or disgrace. So when things, good things happen to us, we shouldn't get carried away with our happiness and become, overconfident and lose ourselves. Likewise, when bad things happen to us, we should not feel discouraged or depressed. So he says, don't think about jumping off a building over a small setback. That would be too naive or immature. And no matter the circumstances, the mind's eye is sparkling clear. Okay, so no matter what the situation we're in, good or bad, we must always follow the principles as a person and in dealing with matters. Do sincerely believe that today one is greatly blessed. Okay, so after receiving the Tao blessing, we must realize that morality and virtues are the most important and precious things. So he says we need to guard them well. Recognize one's original nature to escape the clutches of sense perceptions and passions. Okay, so he says we all have our own mindset, our own selfishness or biases and emotions. So when we cultivate, we need to gradually transform our selfishness to selflessness, turn negative emotions to peaceful emotions. Constantly self-reflect and introspect to purify and brighten the nature and body. So our original or Buddha nature, that came from heaven and is very clean, pure, very beautiful. So why we have bad habits and bad temperament is because we've been tainted or stained in this mundane world. So these negative traits are not inherent. So if we want to return to heaven, he says, shouldn't we get rid of those bad habits and bad tempers? Yes. The true self has no ills and transcends thoughts and forms. So coming from heaven, he says we're very healthy and beautiful. However, the reason why we have so many illnesses is that we have too many desires and a lot of negative emotions, which causes our bodies to become sick. When the heart and mind is in harmony with equanimity, we are rewarded with merits and virtues. True sentient beings, or treat sentient beings with universal respect. The true nature will not be concealed. So he says we should treat everyone equally. Don't think that because someone has a higher status or is wealthier, we should treat those people better, right? If someone is poorer or looks more ordinary, don't treat them worse. So he says be clear-minded, not confused or ignorant. So if we can establish good affinity with sentient beings, then no matter where we go, there will be many benefactors ready to help us. If we look down on people, if we're snobbish and judgmental, then we do not have a heart or mind of equality. And such people have no merits. And he says when we financially or materially support the poor, we have merits. When we give people a warm smile, we also have merits. When we help those in need, we also have merits. Even when we give people a proper or correct word of guidance, that also gives us merits. So performing merits does not mean we necessarily have to give money, right? Just being here and listening to classes today, not only must we be grateful to heaven and Buddhas and saints, but also we need to be even more grateful to the transmitters, staff members, and temple hosts for preparing this place for our use and for their time and effort in making all of this possible. Right? There's so many puzzle pieces to make something happen, so we want to appreciate everything. And all of that is ways to accumulate merits as well. Okay, so Holy Teacher says he hopes disciples remembers one thing he says. Having the ability to give is a very fortunate thing. So we should never be stingy or reluctant to give. When we're poor, our hands are open upward to receive. And when we have the ability, don't forget to turn our hands downward to give back. So he says the way of life follows the Tao and the virtue. So when we do anything, we must not forget to follow the principles of morality and virtue. Understand the mandate and establish one's life starting from the four common states. So he says the so-called four common or ordinary states are simplicity, ordinariness, the normalcy or typical, and the natural. So cultivation is very common in routine. It's not about having this magic ability to fly around, pass through solid objects, swallow fire, etc. He calls those circus acts. The most important thing in cultivation is to be harmonious with others. No matter where we are, whether we're at home, outside, at work, we can get along with people peacefully and harmoniously. Then when we leave this world, we won't be ashamed to face anybody. We won't have any regrets regarding others. Okay. So he says, be soft and gentle, not tough and unyielding. Warmth can melt ice cold. So we want to be gentle and not rigid. In our daily interactions and dealings with others, we should be very gentle. If we're stiff, inflexible, unwilling to compromise, it becomes really difficult for everyone to get along. So Holy Teacher says, look at the plants outside. When they're growing and full of life, they're very soft and flexible. But if a tree branch breaks and is left there for a few days, it becomes very stiff and hard. So for us humans, cultivating the Tao means becoming more lively and joyful the more we practice. That is the right way. If we become rigid and keep a stern face every day, that's not right. So true cultivators are compassionate and warm, not cold and indifferent. He says if our heart is hard, and when we see others suffer and we think, oh, they deserve it, that's their karma, then that is not right. So see through all the pitfalls and traps, refining oneself to perfection. So this world has so many traps, so many pitfalls, perhaps using many things that might benefit us to come tempt us. So we need to be very careful. Relinquishing one's temper and disposition, one is naturally light and free. So he says if we have bad habits and temperaments, for example, liking to take advantage of others or enjoying gossiping, we must work to get rid of them. So when we change all of our bad habits and tempers, what happens then? Well, then every day feels light and joyful. The heart and mind is like a great round mirror flowing with natural affinity, always brings worry-free tranquility. So our heart, when we face a matter or situation, is like a mirror, right? He says this is the highest level of cultivation. Look at a mirror. It does not pass judgment on the image and say, oh, this person is beautiful, I like them. Nor does it say, oh, I like you so much, don't leave. So when it's time to come, they come. When it's time to go, they go. So this is following natural affinity. He says, a mirror also would not say, oh, this person is ugly, I do not want to reflect their image. So similarly, we should treat all sentient beings the same way. Whether someone cultivates well or doesn't, what does it mean? Well, if someone isn't cultivating well, it just means they haven't progressed that far yet. So we shouldn't just reject or exclude them. And if we can understand these principles today, it's because in our past lives, we've already learned them. So in this life, things feel a little easier, smoother, and more natural to hear it. But for others who haven't heard these teachings in past lives, they might still be kind of like kindergartners in this lifetime. So he says, what should we do? Well, we don't reject them. Give them the time and space they need to grow and mature. The hidden treasure is never exhausted. The spirit and essence never wanes. So Holy Teacher says, if we're a college student and we blame a kindergartner for not understanding college level material, then what does that say about us? Well, it means we're also not really that wise or intelligent either. If we treat others with a kind and generous heart, not only will we live joyfully, but those around us will also feel at ease. Okay, so in this line, it's also talking about our Buddha nature, that it's everlasting and it never withers. The circumstances we create knows neither rain nor shine. Okay, so Holy Teacher says he said a lot today in hopes that when we go home, we can be more generous and understanding toward others. But when it comes to ourselves, what should we do? Well, we should hold ourselves to higher standards, keep improving and becoming better. And he says neither rainy nor sunny means a state of calm balance. So we want to be unaffected by ups and downs. So the next section is when Holy Teacher's kind of just talking to the class members. And he says, some people don't speak very nicely to their parents. But whether good or bad, the past is the past. So wishing that from now on, we must cherish the karmic affinity with our parents, okay? Now, Holy Teacher is kind of explaining the poem from earlier. And he says that passage where he says, Tao is plain, common, ordinary, and true. So he says cultivation, he already said, is not talking about special abilities and powers like flying, passing through solid objects, etc. But really, cultivation of Tao starts from human relationships. So that's why Holy Teacher started off by asking if we're filial to our parents. So if we're very filial, then our children will naturally be filial to us back. If our children are not well behaved, we cannot just blame them. We must look at what kind of conduct and behavior we are showing them. And he says, when children watch cartoons, don't they also learn the behaviors, manner of speaking, and actions from the TV? So our children are constantly learning from and watching our conducts and actions. So he says, if we want our children to not watch so much TV, not to use the computer or phone so much, then what must we do? Well, we have to control ourselves first. So he says, do we understand this principle? If we want our children to be good, it is not by teaching with our words, but by our own conducts and actions. Understand? Okay, so we need to be role models and set good examples. We don't want to be hypocrites, not just for our kids, but everyone around us. If we are constantly saying one thing, but then do another, people see that and will lose respect for us. Okay, man must be upright, harmonious, impartial, and moderate. So this means we want to be upright and proper, right? Not crooked or deviant. We want to be harmonious, meaning be kind and peaceful. We want to be unbiased or neutral and moderate. So being neutral means doing things in a balanced and impartial way without taking sides. So Holy Teacher's example says, we shouldn't say, oh, this person, she's prettier, so even if she did something wrong, I'll still say she's good, because that would be wrong, right? If the heart and mind holds no contention, no desires, no selfishness, and no ego, then one will be dignified, self-respecting, free, and at ease. And so when we humans desire or demand something, what can happen? Well, we might end up compromising our principles. So if we want to have a noble character, we should not think of or demand or seek things that don't belong to us. If it's not rightfully ours, we should not take it. What we've earned through hard work and genuine effort, that, of course, we can accept openly and with confidence. But what isn't ours, we must absolutely not take, okay? And only then can we live freely, happily, and joyfully. Okay, so then Holy Teacher asked the class members if they ate breakfast. And he says, only after eating do we have energy, right? So Holy Teacher recommends that we must eat breakfast. Then we can start to be healthy. And he said, some people are not hungry yet. So actually, many people are really not hungry at mealtime because they eat too much and the food has not yet been digested. So Holy Teacher recommends that we eat less so that we can enjoy the food more. If we eat too much, there's a heavy burden on our body and our digestive tract is constantly working, and that is not good for our body. So whether we're young or old, we must take responsibility for our own health. Then he says, it's been said that illnesses enter through the mouth, but misfortunes come out of it. Not only our diet, but our emotions, mindset, and lifestyle all have a big influence on our health. Then he says, when someone talks, person A hears it and thinks nothing of it, but person B thinks that the speaker is ridiculing him. So this is a problem in our own heart and mind. So we have to learn to listen and view people, view matters, view things in a good, positive light. People who always feel as if others are talking about them, they're actually quite miserable, right? So a person who's joyful will always feel that everybody is smiling at them. But a person with a narrow heart or mind always thinks others are treating them poorly. So much of our, the good and the bad actually stems from our own heart and mind. So even our destiny or our fate in our life are the result of our own mindset and our own thoughts. And so I actually knew someone who just constantly assumed people were talking negatively about her, even if people weren't. So she was really just always unhappy, losing friends over it. And the truth is, we don't always realize that we have the power to change our own fates, right? The more positive we are, the more we attract similar people and similar vibes, and we can actually change the direction of our lives. And if we used to feel that we were unlucky, unfortunate, but now we take a different view and start smiling, then we can change our destiny. So when our heart and mind changes, our appearance and fate will also change. He says, do we see Buddhas and Bodhisattvas always smiling, or are they always unhappy? They're always smiling, right? So we should not be gloomy and unhappy. If we can be appreciative and thankful, cherish what we have, cherish our affinities every day, and there can be more joy in our lives. So then Holy Teacher asked the class members to please raise their hands if they think they are handsome or pretty. So I assume some people, raise their hands. And he says, actually, this is not the most important thing. What is most important is that we have a generous, compassionate, and benevolent heart and mind. Our appearance is actually formed by our own heart and mind. So instead of looking in the mirror and checking for wrinkles every day, it's better to take good care of our heart and mind. An 18-year-old person has the youth and beauty befitting of an 18-year-old, while an 80-year-old person has the kind and dignified appearance befitting an 80-year-old. So no matter what our age is, it is most important that we have a joyful, beautiful, and benevolent heart and mind. He says, having received the Tao blessing, it is very fine and fortunate beginning for us. So we know we're super fortunate to have found the Tao, and we get to learn how to turn our thinking around so we can find joy more easily. So Holy Teacher says he has another matter to discuss. These past 2 days, haven't we all been eating vegan food? By eating vegan food and not consuming meat, we're able to cut off negative karmic ties with sentient beings. And when we do this, our own relationships and our life circumstances will gradually improve. So nowadays, there are many natural disasters and human-made calamities, and we all hope to stay safe and healthy, right? So what should we do? We must refrain from killing. There should be no killing in our actions or our intentions. So this applies in everything we do or think, okay? But it starts with trying to eat less meat. Second, we must not steal from others. So he says, don't take what isn't ours. If something doesn't belong to us, we still try to take it, whether by stealing or just by being sneaky about it, then that is not right. He says, whatever we take that we shouldn't have, we'll have to repay it later with interest. Meaning we don't just pay back what we took, but we have to give back even more. Okay, so then he says there's also sexual misconduct. Whether we're male or female, we all need to uphold our personal moral discipline. We can't be careless or casual about it. Especially now with information so accessible, smartphones are so convenient. He reminds us we must not frequently watch inappropriate content on our phones, on the internet. Do we understand? He says, learn to control ourselves a little. And so he says, don't laugh, everyone's the same. And he says to remember that we should focus on disciplining ourselves, not judging others. And finally, we must also not drink alcohol. And he says what he's just instructed us is actually to observe the 5 precepts. So we must observe these 5 precepts and disciplines well. Okay? So the 5 precepts, number 1, no killing. Number 2, no stealing. Number 3, no sexual misconduct. Number 4, no lying. And number 5, no alcohol and intoxicants. So as cultivators, we want to do our very best to uphold these precepts. And if we can do these well, then naturally our Buddha nature will become more and more revealed, and we can eventually one day become Buddhas too, hopefully. So every one of our thoughts, conducts, and actions is actually creating our own destiny and fate. So Holy Teacher hopes that every disciple can be self-respecting and dignified, right? So this is saying that we are the masters of our own lives, of our own fates, right? We can actually control the direction of our lives. So if things don't feel like they're going our way, if we're not happy, things seem really unlucky, that we keep encountering all these obstacles, remind ourselves that we have the opportunity right now in this lifetime to turn that around. So we don't want to be blaming others or constantly complaining about it. Whatever has happened has already happened. It's probably most likely from the seeds of karma that we've already planted ourselves in the past. Whether this lifetime or past lifetimes, we don't know, right? But the key is, as we cultivate, we can turn that around with just our mindset. By thinking more positive things and turning negatives into positives, we're able to switch kind of our mindset in the direction of our fate. So maybe we were destined for a lot of negative things, but if we can keep turning those things around, then we have a chance to make things more positive for ourselves, right? And then things will keep, more and more good things will come to us as we continue to think positive things. So Holy Teacher then passed out fruits to the members, gave them some blessings and encouragements. One of them, he says, within the sour, there is sweet, and after the bitterness, there is sweetness. So sometimes we encounter hardships, right, in our lifetime. Things aren't always going to be easy and smooth, but eventually there will comes a time when things will be sweet and positive if we keep going the right direction, we keep improving and cultivating. So he says he wishes us all good health and happy days, see the good in others, and say good things. With good thoughts, we can be happy every single day. So be happy every day and be nice, right? So remember that Buddhas have always reminded us, when we're all kind to each other, we treat everybody like brothers and sisters, or like our moms and dads, then it's really paradise on earth. We can create our own heaven on earth today. But it's up to each of us that we constantly have to put out positive energy to others into the world, and we will also one day receive that back. So it's really important that it starts with our own mindsets, our own behaviors. The more kindness we can spread to others, it really does impact and has that butterfly effect to others. He also says, wish every one of us to have good peace and good health, and hope that everybody can learn the principles and change their fates, right? So the more we come to temple, the more we can learn. And as we learn these principles, we can apply them to our daily lives. And it's really just about practice. The more we practice doing that, the more natural it becomes, and we start to incorporate the Tao into our daily lives every single day. And so Tao is not just at the temple, right? Remind ourselves that Tao is in everything we do every single day. As soon as we, wake up and when we start our day, we can start incorporating these Tao principles. So remember that Holy Teacher reminds us to eat our breakfast, then maybe we go to work, and then we are, building these relationships with our coworkers. We can apply these Tao principles as well. And, we're not always going to have a smooth relationship with every single person we encounter, but that's when we apply these Tao principles into those hard times, right? That's how we can show our improvement and our progress, is by applying Tao principles into every situation we encounter. And when we do that, then we can change our fates. So he says, Holy Teacher blesses all of us, and as long as we have that sincerity in our hearts, right, heaven will help support and guide us. If we have just 30% sincerity, heaven will give us 70% in assistance and in response. So that's really, really fortunate, because he's saying all we need to do is just give 30% of our effort, 30% of our sincerity. Then heaven always rewards us and sees that, and heaven will help us in response all the time. And even if we can't see it, heaven is always helping us, right? We know the Buddhas are always by our sides, always guiding us along in our journeys. So Holy Teacher says he wishes that everybody can become vegan as soon as possible. So he says, because then we can stop killing, right? When we go vegan, then we can spread more positive affinity with all sentient beings. Then he also says if our relationship with our parents is not so good, we need to take steps to make it better. Okay? So, not everyone has great relationships with their parents. So starting today, we should work on building that. It may not feel very natural at first, but when we put in that effort, heaven will help us more too. And our parents also will, slowly start to change when they see us change as well. So Buddha also says, our life is our own. We cannot just pray to heaven for protection. So we must rely on ourselves to make changes and create a better life. And as long as we're willing to change, then Buddhas and Bodhisattvas will be at our side to help. Okay, so some people, they just go to temple, they pray to heaven for their lives to change for the better. But it's not just about praying, right? We have to take actions and make the changes ourselves. And it starts with our mindsets. So when we are willing to initiate that change and try to transform ourselves first, then naturally things will start to improve and Buddhas can help us as we make progress on our journeys of Tao cultivation. And of all the good deeds, filial piety must be first and foremost, right? So the first thing that we learn in, cultivating the Tao is really about filial piety, treating our parents unconditionally with love and kindness. So if we can't do that, then Tao cultivation is going to be really challenging. Okay? So the most important thing that Buddhas always remind us is our filial piety. And we're never done being filial. Right? No matter what age we are, if our parents are here or not, we can still show our filial piety. And then Buddha says, of all the bad deeds, the worst is lust and depravity. Okay? So therefore, no matter male or female, we must value ourselves highly. Except for the relationship between husband and wife, we cannot have improper relationships with others. Right? So some people say they do not have improper relationships with others, but every day they're thinking improper thoughts. Well, this is not good. Okay, so it's not just about, the action of having improper relations, but also our mindset, our thoughts. Right? Those are still planting seeds of karma. So we want to make sure that we get rid of all of those things if we want to become Buddhas one day. So he says, no matter if we're older or younger, cultivation is about taking responsibility for our own lives. Okay? So people who start their Tao cultivation journeys, some start really young, some start much older into their lifetimes. But either way, it's the same path. We all have to take steps into cultivating. Right? We have to take responsibility for our own life, our own actions, manage ourselves well, as Buddha said. Then he says, when we reach our last breath, being able to feel peaceful with no guilt toward anyone, no guilt toward our own conscience, that is how we can depart this life with ease, right? So all these seeds of karma that we're planting, we need to resolve them. If we can resolve every single karmic affinity, every good or bad karma we have with others, then we can leave peacefully. Right? If we don't, then we still have to keep coming back and resolve it at some point or another. So it's best to use this lifetime, this opportunity, to finish paying back whatever we owe or whatever karmic affinity that's still unresolved. If we finish that, then everything will be smoother. Okay? So Holy Teacher says he blesses everyone, wishes us all peace, health, and for everything to go smoothly in our lives. So we're really lucky that we have our Holy Teachers, all the Buddhas that are watching over us, blessing us, and helping us. But it's up to each of us, right? We want to make sure that we stay self-motivated, constantly go to temple to remind ourselves what is real. And remember that the only everlasting thing that we know is our Buddha nature. So if we can keep cultivating, get rid of our bad tempers, bad habits, get rid of any vices in our lifestyles, then we can bring about our Buddha nature, and naturally it will be our compass. So we just want to make sure we let it be our master. Okay? Once we can do that, then everything, our fates can change for the better. So that's the end of the scripture. So we can conclude the class today. If I said anything wrong, I ask heaven for forgiveness and for transmitters and lecturers to please correct me. Thank you.